Today on Locked On Red Wings, Detroit makes history by drafting forward Michael Brandsegg-Nygard at 15, the first Norwegian ever taken in the first round.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a former broadcast producer for 97 Won the Ticket, where Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is going to be pretty straightforward for you guys. We told you 2 days ago, I guess yesterday, by the time you guys were listening, but we recorded that on Wednesday. We were going to wait until after the first round concluded to give you our episode, and it's kind of hard to say this. Like, it sounds contradictory when you say it out loud, Scotty, but this was almost anticlimactic, but in the most exciting way possible. You know what I mean? But I want to throw it to you first. I don't, because you know how I'll start an episode and I'll talk for 6 minutes. Scotty, I want to get your first blush reaction at the Red Wings picking Michael Brandsegg-Nygard at 15.
Well, I think my first reaction was, oh, wow, they actually just did it. Not in oh, wow, they did it. More in they just took who we all thought they were going to take for the first time, I think, since Yzerman has taken control of this front office. They did the predictable pick, right? Like every single year we have these conversations and it's somebody we don't talk about, right? It's somebody that's not really on anybody's radar. There's a much bigger name that's still on the board. Now, granted, this is the furthest back he's picked since taking role as general manager for the Wings as well. Nice hat, by the way. I just realized.
Thank you.
But it is like he did just pick the guy that everybody was like, yeah, if he's on the board, it's probably going to be him. And sure enough, here we are. So I think, honestly, before we even get into the type of player and my reaction of, injecting this type of talent into the organization, my first reaction was legitimately just look at that. He actually just did the anticlimactic pick. He did the one we all expected. That's a rarity. That's about right.
Yeah, how often are experts actually correct, right?
Yeah.
And before we get too far, I do want to point out we did a profile on MBN with Tony Ferrari back in May. Yeah. So go give that a listen too. And
it's easy to find. Yeah, you can just
type in his name and Locked On Red Wings.
And Locked On Red Wings, and it should be the only thing that comes up. Yeah.
Right. And then also want to give a shout out to Max Bultman. I told him when we did the Beckett Seneca profile that we would do this, which we'll talk about. Beckett Seneca, wow, that was a crazy moment. But the previous 2 years, we profiled the player that was eventually drafted by the Detroit Red Wings with Max Bultman, being Marco Kasper and Nate Danielson. When I first reached out to our profile experts on who they wanted to list, do profiles with us on, Max immediately said MBN. That's the guy he honed in on, but I already had the profile planned with Tony. It is my fault.
You ruined the streak.
I ruined the streak.
Not on Max.
But this was the guy that Max honed in on immediately. So while we did the profile with Tony, and he obviously deserves credit, to Max 3 years in a row correctly predicted the Red Wings draft pick. Which is pretty incredible. And we're off topic. We're going on a tangent. I just wanted to give a shout out to Max Bultman, friend of the show. I'm right there with you. I was you saw my social media post, my Twitter post. I was like,
I didn't.
I'm
like, muted.
Okay, thanks. Of course, it was MBN. Who else would it have been? Everyone kept saying, and you almost fool yourself into thinking that it's not going to be him because everyone's talking about how good of a fit he is. Right? Well, he fits the profile for the identity the Red Wings are trying to form. So, of course, they're not going to pick him because everyone says they're going to pick him. And we were so close to getting Consta Helenius, too, which another guy would have been thrilled to get because he's such a smart player and such a good playmaker. But when they went up there and they took MBN, and mind you, Steve Yzerman, Chris Draper, Nick Lidstrom, They filled out that name card, they folded it, handed it to Nick, and then they sat there and talked for 2 minutes. Like
I think the NHL
like let the clock
tells them to.
Yeah,
right?
let the clock run down.
Like legitimately, and like it got a little better as the night went along. We can save this for later, but like they were legitimately, they wouldn't even leave until the clocks hit 0, and then they were like, all right, now we'll go up there for a lot of people. So
right, which again we'll save it for later. But what was the point of the
2
clocks
minutes to write his name? To be honest, goodness gracious.
Right. What do we like about MBN, Scotty? What? There's so much, right?
And like at the end of the day, like this is a 15th overall pick. We'll talk about kind of what we're hoping to see from him on, like as far as development and improvement goes here in a second for sure. But there really is a lot to like here. I think that, when we talked about him with Tony, the general opinion that we shared during that conversation was that this was like a pretty high floor type of guy. And we'll talk about the ceiling again in a second, but this is a guy with size and a really good shot and some speed, given even with his size, rather. On top of that, he's athletic and big, and again has a really, I want to say underrated, but kind of by 3 or 4 days before the draft, I think most people were like, "Oh, he's got a really underrated shot," and it's like, at what point does he just have a good shot? And like we're all just kind of in agreement on it. So. Yeah, man, I think there's a lot to like in the profile here. You have some intangibles and such, again, with the size and speed combo, but you also have some good things to look at on the ice, again, with the shot and really creativity was something that was talked about. But he's a power forward. He, power forward. That is what every single person, every single expert and scout and draft analyst called him, power forward. And if you can own all of those things in and raise, again, the ceiling, or like raise the attributes of all of those different areas we just talked about, you'd have a pretty darn good player on your hands. But I think this is just another guy that fits into this system where it's like, you know what? At a minimum, this dude's going to be a productive NHL player. It's just a matter of how high the ceiling is.
Yeah, and I mean, you draft him, he immediately becomes your best right wing prospect. You look at your depth chart for right wings that Detroit Red Wings have, and it's like, who do you have? Jesse Kiskinen and Jonathan Berggren. Those are your options at right wing right now. One of those guys you just got 2 days ago as part of that. I guess you could call it a pseudo 3-way trade, right? Where you traded Gibson for Kiskinen in a second. Yeah. The first of the infamous 2 trades that happened on Wednesday. So he slides in. He immediately becomes. He feels. Not only was he one of the best players available, and that is not arguable. It also fills the need. You really, really, really are blessed when you can do both at once. It fills a need, and he was one of the best players available on the board. Like, you can split hairs about who really truly was the best, but MBN, like, there's a reason people were projecting him to the Red Wings at that spot. It just made so much sense. And you mentioned his shot, right? Like, he does have a wicked shot. The other things about him, though, to me that really stand out is the things that he brings that this team doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of, especially in their middle and top 6. And he's years away. I don't want to sound like I'm rushing him. Yeah. But he, on top of that really wicked shot, like, he thrives along the boards. He is, like you said, a power forward. He is an aggressive forechecker. He's 6'1", and he is not afraid to throw his weight around.
And that fits the system, right? Like, that's something that this team is looking for, guys who can be very effectively aggressive on the forecheck. And that is something that, given his play style and body type, you are very, very pleased and confident that he can become that at the NHL level.
Yes. So not only is he in the offensive zone, he's engaging in puck battles, winning those puck battles, and then setting up his teammates. And on the power play, he's a right-handed shot that plays on the right wing. And Prashant Iyer, check out Prashant Iyer's Twitter account, because he shared some really good heat maps for Michael Brandsegg-Nygard on where he really thrives. And stop me if you've heard this before. On top of all those things we've just sung about him in the offensive zone, he's a 2-way forward. Now, doesn't that sound familiar?
You knew it was coming. You knew somebody had to say it. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we talk about when we say it fits the ideology that the Red Wings are trying to build. The identity, I guess, is the better word that the Red Wings are trying to build, is that they're filling their system with responsible two-way forwards. And remember Max's passionate monologue from a couple weeks ago. For some reason, the phrase two-way forward has become almost co-opted to mean like defensive first, which that's not the case. Two-way means that they play well in both zones, offensive and defensive. So not only is he going to help you get possession and retain possession in the offensive zone, he's going to play good defense along his board. He's going to catch the puck and then transition the puck out of the zone and then win puck battles in the defensive zone to get the possession back. So there's just so much to like about him. And in segment 2, we'll talk about the one area I feel still needs to develop with MBN before we can confidently say like he'll be a superstar at the NHL level. Of course, I'm being hyperbolic right there for fun. But there's one area that I think a lot of Red Wings fans are going to note, and I just want to talk about it in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings, so make sure you stay tuned. It's not segment 2. I got to talk to you guys today about eBay Motors. Getting ahead of myself. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at eBay Motors. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Available only to U.S. customers. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, I want to touch on the one area that I really think does need to develop with Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, the newest Detroit Red Wing, picked 15th overall by the Detroit Red Wings, like everybody thought. And it's not going to come as much of a shock. MBN with Mora IK of Hockey Allsvenskan put up 18 points in 41 games, so just shy of a point per game. And I think that's what people are going to hone in on is his offensive production. Because I think a lot of Red Wings fans, and rightfully so to a certain extent, really want a high impact forward. I know a lot of Red Wings fans had really gotten married to the idea of Cole Eisman, who was on the board there. He didn't get picked till 20th.
Yeah, I think that's the discussion for sure.
Yeah. They want a high impact guy whose job is to score goals, that dynamic goal scorer. And MBN, while he has that really, really good shot, still needs to develop a little bit higher production. I, for one, though, am not all too worried about that. He's making the jump to the SHL this season coming up, which Hockey Allsvenskan is the second highest professional league in Sweden. He's making the jump to the SHL. He's playing with a team whose name I can't pronounce, but his production's going to develop. He has all the tools to score goals. It's all those other things he already has that's going to make him an effective player in the NHL one day. The production will come with it. I think all he really has to do is he has a really, really good wrist shot. He just has to get the release a little bit faster. He needs to be able to release the shot a little bit faster to be a more effective goal scorer. But I mean, that's the point of developing prospects.
Yeah, well, and this is, again, the conversation of floor and ceiling, right? Like all the reasons you just laid out is why he also has such a high floor as well. He can impact the game in a lot of different ways. The ceiling will be determined by the point production, right? Like that those things go hand in hand with each other. So the reason as to why he is viewed as somebody who has a very high chance of being an NHL caliber player is also the reason why the ceiling is a question mark. And that you're absolutely right. And that is, when you think of power forwards, you don't often, there's a few exceptions, obviously, in the sport, but you don't often think of, okay, high production, high profile, point producers. And so I think that is going to be the biggest question mark. I completely agree with you. I'm not, honestly, like I'm relatively confident in the shot. I think you have a point there when it comes to just like release and timing and whatnot. But I think that just how he impacts the game in the offensive zone as a whole is something that is going to need to be worked on. And again, like we both said at the beginning, this is a guy who is not going to be here for years at the present moment. This is not somebody who's gonna come over, this year or next. So he's got time to work on that, and he will work on that. And I'm really excited to watch, because if it does click and he does produce points on the offensive side of the puck, that is when you start getting really, really excited about what he could become and the heights that he could reach. But at a base level on draft night, you're really excited about all the different ways he can impact the hockey game.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. And that brings me to my next question for you, Scotty, is when it comes to how long you think it's going to take him to make that breakthrough season in the NHL, when do you think he makes his debut?
Yeah, I think we're talking about 2 or 3 years. I think that's a safe bet. I'm not even sure when the immediate plan would be for him to come over to North America. I can't even imagine that that's going to be a super soon thing. So I think given that, and then the adjustment to North America after coming over, right? I think, yeah, you're probably talking, I would say 3, give or take 1 on either side, depending on, if he way exceeds expectations or maybe is slower. But I think that's probably where I'd put it, 3 plus or minus 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, personally,
Which
I think
isn't
it's
an
going to be a
issue
little
either. That's like fine.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's personally going to be a little bit closer to 3 or 4 years for
Mm-hmm.
Nygard. And the main reason I say that is because, one, a lot of your players taken between 10 and 20, they're not like the upper echelon guys that are gonna break into the league year 1 or year 2. Not to say he's not talented; he is absolutely talented.
Also, play style. Power forward, he's 18. In order to be a productive power forward at the highest level, you gotta grow into your body and learn how to again adjust to just playing bigger and tougher competition.
And a lot of your top caliber, or a lot of your Swedish, he's not Swedish, he's Norwegian, first Norwegian ever to be taken in the first round. And then Stein Solberg, like 10 picks later, was the second Norwegian
really cool,
ever taken first round.
Super cool. What a night.
Yeah, especially for the country of Norway. But he plays in Sweden, is what I was trying to get at. And typically guys who play in Sweden, it's about but taken between picks 10 and 20. And I'm overgeneralizing, I know that, but I'm just for a basis.
Yeah, but that's fair.
2 years of SHL gameplay is what it's going to take before they make the leap to North America. Not the NHL, but the leap. I said this with Gil Martin in the instant reaction video that's up on our channel. Give that a listen as well. Help pay our bills. Me in particular. And so, Scott, I'm unemployed.
Okay.
Help me out.
Yeah, I don't need forgive
me. Yeah, but you got another job. You got 2 other jobs. But anyway, I would suspect 2 years in the SHL before coming over to North America, and then maybe a year or 2 in Grand Rapids. And I know saying that, people are going to be like, oh, these project play. That's the state of prospects in the NHL, man. Axel Sandin-Pellikka lit it up in the SHL, and guess who's going back for a second year?
Right.
Axel Sandin-Pellikka. So that's just the nature of NHL prospects. Unless you're taking 1 through 5, the chances of you taking a few years to make it to the NHL are pretty high. So
there's also, again, like given his style of play and what we're looking for him to work on as well, like it makes sense that would be something that would take a couple of years. But there's nothing wrong with that. He's 18, dude. Like he can take 3 years and be 21 when he comes over and be still one of the youngest players in the league. Like it's really that's totally fine. Especially again, I think maybe sometimes people forget that we're picking the latest we've picked in a long time. This is not a number 4 to 10 overall pick. We're right there in the middle of the draft. This is a mid-first rounder, and that's about right. I think just because we've spent so many years in the top 10. People are used to that timeline, which might be a little bit quicker. This is not the same caliber of at least on draft night, the same caliber of player or expectations. So
yeah, precisely. Scott, do you have anything else to say about MBN? I think,
I don't think so, man. I'm just really excited. I like it a lot. I think, again, when the players that, and we can talk about Yzerman on the other side of the break, honestly, Cole, not Steve, and talk about just the fact that he was on the board when and because that's something that a lot of people point to. But I think that on draft night, where the Wings are picking, you are looking for a player who can impact the game in a lot of different areas, and that is exactly what MBN does. He can impact a game in a lot more than just the score sheet, and if he can end up producing on the score sheet as well, you're talking about a pretty exciting kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about Cole Yzerman, probably touch on Beckett Seneca and any other maybe notable moments from the sphere in general as well. In segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings, so stay tuned for that. I'll talk to you guys today about FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, playoffs are over now. In fact, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting the way I want them to, unless you like baseball. But even the Tigers, not so great. Listen to Locked On Tigers for more. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuelSports.com, /locked on, and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Did you like that, buddy? I plugged your show.
The whisper freaked me out, honestly. Did you like that, buddy? You weirdo.
All right, Scotty. You wanted to talk about Cole Yzerman. I'll give you the floor.
I think it's worth a conversation. Because that is one of the players, maybe even the one player, who a lot of people going into draft night were saying, if he is on the board, then maybe that makes MBN not the slam dunk easy selection. And when we profiled him, it was really fascinating, the conversation that came out of it, because I think that he's somebody that everyone sees the upside. Everybody is aware of the upside and the potential, but there's also a reason that he fell to 20, right? Like he wasn't just available when the Wings picked, and a lot of people were kind of not expecting that to happen. He fell all the way to the Islanders at 20. And I think that is also for a reason. You see the high skill and you see the upside, but there's also a very low floor with him. And there's a lot of question marks surrounding whether his game and consistency will translate to the next level. So I have no issue. I mean, look, if Yzerman was the pick, I would have came on here and I would have been excited about it too, because again, of the upside that presents itself and the high point producing possibilities. That's a lot of alliteration there, but I think that at the end of the day, I have no issue passing on him. Only time will tell, truly, at the end of the day. But he's like the one guy where, if he's on the board and MBN is still on the board, then maybe part of the fan base would have rather gone with Cole Yzerman.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Elite Prospects aggregation of all the rankings, he fell beneath everybody's projected placement for him. And, personally, am I shocked he fell to 20? Yes. Am I shocked that he fell overall? No. And, I mean, I think it has to come by that, like, he's a run and gun type player, right? He's a pure shooting sniper, offensive forward, and I think the lack of a defensive game to him, he's kind of a one-dimensional player, but that one dimension is really, really good. Yeah. And so I think a lot of NHL scouts, and I'm just speculating, but I would assume a lot of NHL scouts kind of balked a little bit at the idea of getting a guy who can do one thing really well, but doesn't seem all too interested in the other aspects of the game. Instead, drafting guys like, for instance, Consta Helenius at 14, who is a cerebral playmaking player, who's a two-way forward. You want guys who can do the little things properly and hope you can grow the goal-scoring asset. Now, if Cole Yzerman could go out there and his ceiling could be like 40 goals. Who knows?
For sure.
But at the same time, if that doesn't happen, you're looking at, and this isn't an insult, this is still, a good result for anyone who goes to the NHL. That's always what you want. But like a Daniel Sprung type, right? A guy or Dominic Kubalik, your guy who plays in the bottom six, maybe some power play minutes, scores goals. I'm not making
I'm not
saying that's how he plays,
right?
But I'm just talking about production-wise.
Yeah, even like Anthony Ciu is like one that jumps out, right? Like he's going to have his offense and he's going to be productive there, but he's only going to get deployed in the offensive zone because he's the worst defensive forward you've ever seen, and he doesn't add too much else to the team. And it's like and that's a conversation we had with Prashant. You can go watch that breakdown as well, where it's just like you said, I don't want to just repeat and just talk in circles, but you said it really well there. Like if he reaches the ceiling, then great. You have a really high-end guy. But if he does anything but hit that, you're talking about a guy who's not going to be in the top six in lineups because they can't afford to, because he's not good enough at the other aspects.
Yeah, which is, again, that's just why I wasn't too shocked. I was shocked he fell that far, but I wasn't shocked that he fell. Scotty, the big shocker of the night, Beckett Seneca at 3. He was surprised too. If you looked at it's like, remember when Moritz Seider was picked 6 and he was like, oh my God, that was Beckett Seneca tonight.
Yes, absolutely, man. I say all the time, I have a lot of friends who are Ducks fans, and I mean, that was a rowdy couple of minutes there, but I think the fan base is still pretty excited. There's obviously the immediate reaction from a lot of them, like, oh my goodness,
Demidov fell.
Right, that's the biggest reason, right? Like, it's not only did they go off the board, but they also had the projected number 2 pick fall. So, but look, the Ducks stuck to their guns there and went with their guy. If it works out, they look like geniuses. If it doesn't, then they don't. But he kept falling too, which I think is also noteworthy. What did he go 5 to Montreal? So
yeah, which is shocking to me because I had heard that when he showed up in North America at Dan Milstein's camp in Florida, that people were really impressed by him.
Yeah,
so I thought that would reinforce him at 2 or 3. I know there was conversations about Lev Shinov out of Michigan State, which is, I know you're not a Michigan State fan, but that's still pretty cool.
Very cool, yeah.
A Michigan State hockey player went 2nd overall, but I know there were conversations between Lev Shinov and Demidov, so I wasn't blown away when Lev Shinov got picked at 2. Still, I personally would have gone Demidov, but neither here nor there. I'm not an NHL scout.
The biggest shock for sure.
But we talked. That's the guy we did end up talking to Max Boltman about because MBN was already slated to be talked about with Tony Ferrari, and he had Beckett Seneca I can't exactly remember, but it was either somewhere between 9 and 12. So him to go to 3 was a big shock.
Big shock, yeah. And the people that cover the Ducks that sorry, a very loud noise just happened outside my window.
I didn't hear anything.
The people I talked to that cover the Ducks had said, at first there's obviously the immediate kind of shocked reaction, but they have done a really solid job of kind of replenishing the farm over the last couple of years in their rebuild, and they have quite a decent amount of young talent stocked up, either right at the NHL level or that's about to be at the NHL level. So I guess that the Ducks felt like they were in a position where they could take a little bit more of a swing and take a little bit more of a risk instead of just taking the highest projected guy that kind of fell into their lap. They could take a little bit more of a big swing there and see what happens. So yeah, obviously the story of the draft was that, and the other one honestly was probably Yzerman falling all the way to 20. Yeah,
and last thing on the draft is just the sphere was super cool.
Crazy.
It's so funny because I have such mixed feelings on the sphere. I think it's the most extra thing ever in the history of mankind.
Yeah, it is.
This giant LED sphere. It is still
so
dope.
cool, though.
It's just a massive flex by Las Vegas.
Right. Yeah, it was
but-
wild, dude. The way that everything about it looked crazy. Yeah, I feel like I'd get a migraine.
Right, but all the photos, and that had to have been the most visually exciting draft I've ever seen.
They'll
It
get
was such a cool thing.
the Sphere will get one of the other 3 sports will have a draft there very, very soon now.
Imagine the NFL there, dude.
I don't think you could.
That's
Legitimately, I don't think you could because there'd be it's not big enough.
the entire outside of the
I
building is a
guess
giant
if
LED
you
screen,
said like,
too.
oh, you have to buy tickets to get in, and then like everybody else can hang outside, I guess you could do that for sure.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to bring you guys is actually not draft related. It's Patrick Kane related. Emily Kaplan wrote an article this morning, kind of just a latest around the NHL type thing. She said, and I'll read this basically verbatim because I don't want to paraphrase her. She says, I was told he's very much still in contact with Detroit as of this week and could re-sign as a Red Wing. Kane views Detroit as a good team going in the right direction. The 2 things that are most important to Kane are fit and a legitimate chance to win. Also sounds like he wants some term and that he could potentially double the contract that he's making now. So Patrick Kane is pretty much what Steve Yzerman told us. He's still in contact with the Detroit Red Wings. This report by Emily Kaplan kind of goes further to say, like, they're not just talking, but Kane is actually very willing to return if the contract is right. So
let's not get it twisted. Like, I appreciate his biggest, want is, a team that's competitive and whatnot. And I'm sure he's not going to go, sign with, like go back to Chicago or I don't know, go to like some bottom feeder team. Like I'm sure, right? But at the same breath, he's going to go to the team that gives him term. That is, I am so confident that is his biggest priority. I could not be more confident that. And look, if he signs a 1-year deal, then I'll come on here and say I was wrong. I've been wrong about Patrick Kane specifically before in the last 8 months. It wouldn't be the first time, but like. I would be stunned if he went somewhere that didn't give him a multi-year deal. I think that is first and foremost what he is looking for. And then he's obviously going to only negotiate with teams that are relevant and in at least the playoff picture, if not the cup picture. But I'm very confident that his biggest motivator is the longest contract he can get.
Well, and then there's another thing to consider as well, as Pierre Lebrun reports that Stamkos agent Don Meehan tells the people that Stamkos will be a free agent on July 1st.
Sure will, bud.
So if you whiff on Kane, Stamkos is right there. Now, and the Red Wings have been connected to Stamkos. Red Wings have been connected to everyone. It's actually been insane.
Yzerman kind of is connected to everybody. It certainly is with Stammer, obviously, yeah.
He's been kicking a lot of tires around the league lately.
Dude, he better, after giving up a second to get rid of Jake Wallman, he better be kicking some tires.
Right. So just a couple of updates for you guys. Red Wings are still in contact for Patrick Kane. He's willing to return to Detroit. It sounds like, of course, on the right contract, but you are competing with, Emily Kaplan also noted, Vegas and New York as 2 of the competitors, and we both know Vegas doesn't know what a salary cap is. They're going to find a way to bring Patrick Kane on board if they can.
Oh, they know too well what it is, actually. I think you're wrong. I think it's the exact opposite. They know, they are very familiar with the salary cap and how to exploit it.
And then, of course, New York, he played with the Rangers already. He wanted to go to New York when they traded him. Obviously, he had the bad hip at the time, so and it's a lot closer to home. I believe he's from Buffalo, so it's really just the perfect storm for him. So there's going to be stiff competition for Patrick Kane, but we knew that. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Next episode we'll do is July 1st, so.
Busy times.
Yeah. It's going to be a busy next few days, rounds 2 through 7 on Saturday. So we'll record Sunday to talk about that. And then, yeah.
And next week's free agency, baby.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
We
finally have things to talk about. LFG.
And then after 2 weeks, it'll be nothing for a month and a half, bud. Thanks for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen.
Every day. Scotty, you have any final thoughts, brother?
We ball, baby.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Sunday, talking about rounds 2 through 7. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.